Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works, home of Michigan's largest custom knife factory showroom. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. We'll start out a short series on tanning a coyote hide.
When I lay it in here, I'm going to make sure that all the skin gets on the salt, and then we're going to just bury it in salt.
And some tips on pruning your apple trees. Sit back, put your feet up and the remote down. It's time for 906 Outdoors. 9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. .906 Outdoors is brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings. Make it fresh, make it yours. Tanning is the process of treating skins and hides of animals to produce leather. It involves a process which permanently alters the protein structure of skin, making it more durable and less susceptible to decomposition. A tannery is a place where the skins are processed. And so is the garage of Dave Kleikamp. I visited Dave several times throughout the process of tanning a coyote hide.
I had gotten a coyote, we had shot it. When I did, I kind of fleshed it, but I'm just going to go back over it. I'm going to hit some of the spots again and just try to get a little bit more off. The knife, this is the dull side, this is the sharp side. And what I'm doing, I'm going to use the dull side, because what you just want to do is you just want to kind of push some of this off. And when you get over a hole, you want to turn the blade this way, so you push it over it. You don't want to go like this, because you're going to snag it and you'll rip it bigger. That's pretty much what we're doing, just trying to push fat off and the skin. Down here it gets tough, so a lot of times I'll get it and I can just pull it off. And you just want to do a little bit at a time. You don't want to keep pushing real big, because that's when you're going to make holes. Or when I put it in the pickle, this is all going to get soft again. And so then I'll do my final fleshing on a lot of this. I already split the tail all the way down to the end, because when I do the salting and the tan and all that, I want to make sure that I get all the way down. And up on the head, I use scalpels because they're real nice. I split the ears. You can kind of get your hand in there, and then you'll just go right along the black. You don't want to cut the black, you want to stay on the white, just so it peels out. Then a lot of times I'll check it by putting my finger in. You can see how far my thumb is. My thumb's right there, so I know I can do a little more trimming. And for tanning, you don't have to quite go all the way, because this is the cartilage. That'll dry up. You know, you put your tan will get on the backside, the ears, you know, and everything will be cured. Probably about as far as I'm going to go, because this coyote was frozen and I know it's a little dry. And what I want to do, I'll put it in a pickle. And then when I do the final fleshing, I can come back and finish out, get, you know, close to the tip of the ear as I can. The nose, I trim back. I cut the cartilage, cut around, trim the nose out. Then I'll just cut it off. I split the lips, and these are either the balls for the whiskers. You don't want to cut them. If you do, you're going to lose the hair. You'll lose the whiskers. So you got to be, you know, careful cutting around them. Splitting, you put your finger on the underside, and you can feel where you're cutting. And if you cut too deep, you'll know it. This is a little bit freezer burn, so when I take it out of the pickle for the final fleshing, this will be all moist again, and I'll be able to finish doing splitting of the lip. I'll do all of this trimming, get the meat off after I take it out of the pickle for the final fleshing. I'll get rid of all this meat. But for now, we'll leave it like that, and then we have to salt it to stop the bacteria from, you know, ruining the hide. I'm going to put a layer of salt down on the table. I usually put plastic. I just get a garbage bag, plastic garbage bag, split it open, lay it down. That way you ain't getting salt and blood and everything all over the table. This is it's non-iodized salt, food grade salt. It works real well for the beginning of the tanning process. Then when I lay it in here, I'm gonna make sure that all the skin gets on the salt. We're gonna lay it out and I'm gonna press it, get all the air out of it, or as much as I can. And then we're gonna just bury it in salt.
906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Christ, your Northwoods neighborhood store.
And I like to make sure that I get the ears buried really good, the face really good. Like the bottom lip, you gotta make sure that you take it, put that in the salt. And I like to turn the nose up like this, because then I can just fill that right up with salt. And this is gonna stop the bacteria from ruining the hide. Then I'll open the tail up. The salt will kind of hold it open as you go. And I make sure that I get way up to the corners, the edges. And I'll lift the ears, because if you look, you can see how this kind of missed right here. So I'll always lift the ear and I'll put salt in there too. Then I can lay it back down and I know it's been salted. Same thing on the other ear. You can see how all this there wouldn't have been no salt there. I'll just sprinkle some salt on, and then we'll just put it back and bury it in the salt. And on the legs too, we'll tuck that, get some salt tucked in here. And the salt will take out some of the bloodshot here. You want to make sure that on the bottom part here, make sure the hair's back, because see how you miss, so then you can fill all that in. And that looks pretty good for the salting process right now. So then we're going to let it sit like this, and then tomorrow we'll take it out of the salt, rinse it, wash it, and then we'll put it in the pickle tomorrow. You can see where the salt drew a lot of the blood out, dries it up. So I'm gonna pull it out of the salt and we'll wash it all up, and there ain't no real wet spots from not having the salt on it. And clean it out of the tail a little bit there. Feel that it's stiff, but that's what we're after, I guess, get the moisture out of it. And then we're gonna put it in the water and finish washing the salt off of it. Yeah, then I'm gonna turn it inside out, because I want to wash it up a little bit and get it cleaned out. And the more you wash them, the furs, the softer it'll get and the better it'll get. And this is what I like to do right away, is just get as much of the blood off of it as I can. So I'm gonna put Dawn dish soap in this one, and that'll help take more of the blood out and clean the hide. In the long run, it'll make the hide look better, the fur, everything. So kind of pick it up slowly and just start squeezing the water out of here. I'm gonna get as much blood out of here as I can. Then I'm gonna put it in the Dawn dish soap, because this will even clean it some more. For a coyote, I usually use about 3 gallons of water to make the pickle. 5-gallon bucket is a little bit small for, an average coyote to a big coyote. It's just too small, so I use a little bit bigger container. For every gallon of water, you're gonna use a pound of salt. And I'm just gonna dump all of this salt in the water. I'm gonna stir it up, get it all mixed up really good. This Mackenzie Ultimate Acid, that has to be measured also. It's a 1/2 ounce per gallon of water. So I got 3 gallons of water, so I'm gonna put 1.5 ounces of acid in it. Dump all of that in. This is the pH paper. If the pH gets too high, it's gonna make your hides hard. Like I could see we're about 1, so that's just about right where I wanna be for right now. If the pH goes up, you just have to add a little more acid. And then when you put it in the pickle, you wanna have it so the skin side is out. So we're just gonna turn it back again. Make sure everything's all turned out. And then we're just gonna put it in the pickle, push it in, and then I'm gonna get a couple plastic jugs that are filled with water, and I'll I'll put them on top so it stays submerged. It'll sit in the pickle for 3 days. I'll pull it out and I'll do the final fleshing on it. The pickle, it plucks the hide so you can do the final fleshing. It's going to make it easier to do the shaving on it. And when you put it on a stretcher, it's going to hold the hair. It's going to make the hair hold better on the hide. And that'll be it for today then.
906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by NutriFeed, nutritional feed solutions for deer and horses.
It's been in the pickle for 3 days now. We're going to do the final fleshing on it. And then it's going to go back in the pickle for another day. And then we'll take it out, put it in a neutralizing solution for a little while, and get the moisture off of it. Then we'll put the tan on it. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to do some final fleshing on the face. You could see we got, heavy meat around the eyes, around the lips, some on the ears. We have to get the meat off, otherwise bugs will come in and they'll eat on there, then the hair will fall out. And then we're going to thin the lips out so it's nice and thin so it don't shrink as much. So we're just gonna start cutting the meat off. It takes a while, but I'm retired, I got all day. And it's gonna make the hide a lot softer, easier to stretch. And you gotta be careful so you don't cut through, make holes. Because if you make a hole, you gotta sew it up. The black dots here, this is like hair follicles. Because when you turn it around, you'll see the whiskers in that. So you try not to cut the balls. You don't want the whiskers to fall out. So you gotta be careful going around them. And I'll take a knife, I'll kind of get in here and I'll separate them. And you have your finger underneath so you can feel where you're cutting. So you don't cut too deep. You can see how that'll separate. Then the whiskers will stand out better. And we don't need all of this, so I'm just gonna cut a bunch of this right off. And like you can see, the whiskers kind of stick out, so you want to keep them tucked in so you don't cut them off when you're thinning the meat off the lips. And on the front feet, there's like three little pads. So you have to push up, cut, push up, and cut. And you'll see it, it's changing color, so it's getting thinner. And with my finger being in here in the foot, you can feel the thickness. So you can just keep, pushing and cutting. And you got to make sure that you don't cut the bottom of the foot, because I can feel it's getting pretty thin right there, so I'm going to kind of stop for now. And having a good sharp pair of scissors really works well. And that feels pretty good because I can feel that it's real thin. So that's as far as I'm going to pretty much go for now. I don't want to make a hole if I don't have to. And the more you get off, the softer the hide's going to be. It's just going to make the tan soak in better. And you still got to be real careful not to cut through the hide. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it back in the pickle now for another day so the pickle can work where I cut the meat off. So I'm just going to put it right back in and we'll cover it up. And tomorrow's another day.
While we're waiting for Mr. Coyote to get pickled, we'll take a look at some of the other critters found hanging around Dave's garage.
With the beaver, I do them a couple different ways. Some people like them with the round with the hoop, and some people just like them case skinned out. I leave the feet on. I can skin out the tail, and it's all tanned. It's not going to go to heck or anything. A lot of people do like the rings. And I do sew the legs up so you don't see through them when they dry and stretch. What I'll do with the skunks, I'll go in and I'll take out the stink sack so then you can skin them like any other animal. And I do like to leave the feet on them. It just, I don't know, to me it makes the animal look better. Makes it like one whole animal instead of having the feet cut off. Same thing with all animals. You can just take them upside down, shake them, and It just fluffs the fur back up, makes them look a lot nicer. This is an early season coon. Fur ain't real heavy on it. Same thing. I'll skin the feet out on the raccoons. The hide really turned out nice on it. It's nice and soft. Fox are, pretty much the same thing. Turn them upside down. Don't grab it by the tail. Grab it by the back of the animal, and you could shake it, and it just makes the hides look a lot nicer. This is a gray fox. I lost 1 foot on it, but sometimes that happens with trapping. Just take them, shake them. On a porcupine though, be careful when you to shake it, to clean it, because it still does have the quills, and they're all through the animal on the head, and they are very sharp. They will still stick in you.
We'll check back in next week with the next step in the process. 906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Blades Bait and Tackle, your year-round connection to fishing bait enoch. Here's some tips on springtime apple tree pruning.
3 main things you want to think about getting out of the tree. Includes dead and dying branches. Right over here we can see a branch that died off. We need to get that limb out of there. You can also sometimes do what's called a bend test. This twig right here, I can tell is a little bit dead, but if I bend it, it just snaps right off, so I know it's dead. Live limbs, you can do a little bend test and they won't break. They will be flexible, so I know that one's still alive. I typically want to clean out sucker shoots. That is a lot of these branches that are coming off of the main trunk. Sucker shoots really just crowd out the interior of the tree. And with fruit trees, you want maximum light and maximum airflow in there to help against fungal infections and mold and mildew. Lastly, you want to look for crisscrossing and rubbing branches. When things are crisscrossing and rubbing, they can cause injury to each other, and again, mold, fungus, mildew, other diseases can get in there too. There is an optimal place to do these cuts. You want to cut the branches right at what's called a branch or twig collar. So a couple of things with this branch: it's going right up into the middle of the tree, it's clogging things up, it's rubbing and crisscrossing. So I'm going to remove this branch right here. I want to cut it very close to the stem, but not right up against the stem. There's a slight swelling right at where the stem attaches to the main trunk here, and that's called the branch collar. So I kind of want to cut right in between that branch collar. So you can see I left maybe 1/8 of an inch of a stub here. The branch collar has a lot of healing tissue in it, so this branch collar will heal over very nicely. If I was to leave this stub too long, then we would get more sprouts coming right out of that stub. It still has a lot of hormones in it. But if I cut it just right, it should heal over perfectly. If I cut it too close to the stem, I've eliminated a lot of that healing tissue, and you might have an open scar for several years in there. In future years, what I would also train the tree a little bit is to produce more fruiting stems versus vegetative stems. So vegetative branches are almost always these sucker shoots, and you can see they're very much elongated and stretched out, as opposed to these fruiting stems, very tight together. The buds are very close together as well. If you run into a stem like this that you want to keep and you want to promote more fruiting stems, what you can do is just nip the tip off and make a nice little cut right where there's a bud. But what this does is it forces this stem to make more lateral branches. And those lateral branches is what's going to produce a lot of fruit for you in the future. But be careful, you also don't want too many lateral branches and too much fruit, because that will weigh the tree down excessively, and that can start tearing off limbs, especially when we get an early snow or something like that in the fall. Myself, what I do is I try to take off any branch that might be pointing straight up and any branch that might be pointing straight down. I really like lateral growth. It helps to not have any branches that are going to crisscross or rub, and then it helps with that pulling of fruit from below. So on this branch, so to speak, I would just do, this one is pointing down, that's pointing down, pointing down. I would take this big one off that's pointing up. Here I can see that there's dead tissue right on the end, but a live stem. So I would just make a nice angle cut. If there's a big branch that broke off in 1 year or something like that, and you see a sucker shoot that's going to fill in some empty spaces, and it might turn into a nice fork per se, then go ahead and leave that, and you can start training that branch or that sucker shoot in the future too. So this was a branch I just took off of here, but it does look like a young tree in a way. So if you've planted a young tree and you're looking to train it and just help it be healthy as it's growing up, you want the branches spaced out nicely so that in the future they will have airflow and good sunlight. You want it to almost look like a ladder appearance from side to side on the tree. So this one here is looking pretty nicely, but I can see this stem here may eventually crisscross with something else, so I would probably take that one off. Same with this little stub here too, and this little stub. What you really want to do is just kind of work from the bottom up. So I would take off a lot of these lower branches throughout the years as it grows up. When the snow starts getting heavy and melting and it's got that crust on top in the spring, that heavy snow can really start pulling on these branches, and it will really just cause damage when it pulls that branch away. If the tree's getting too tall as well, you can definitely nip the tips off some of these taller top branches. I can kind of just nip the tip right at a bud, and that will again force the tree to grow more lateral branches. When do we want to prune these things? Definitely do it during the dormant season when there's no leaves on the trees. As the buds really swell up and get a lot more fuzzy, you do not want to prune those trees anymore. Wait until the following fall. October, November is a great time to do it. One very common problem with fruit trees in the Upper Peninsula is what's called frost cracking. Frost cracking happens in the late winter when the sun starts getting really warm, and that south side of the tree will warm up during the day, but then when the sun goes away and that bark is warm, it freezes off very quickly and it'll eventually create a crack. There's really not much to do about that. The good thing about fruit trees is they really are able to heal themselves over very well. So in most cases, just let the tree do its own thing. When I'm making these pruning cuts as well, some folks think they should put some kind of wound dressing on here too. I do not advise to use wound dressing because that can seal in mold and mildew and fungus. Again, the tree heals itself over on its own very nicely in most cases.
Feel free to join us on Facebook or visit us at 906outdoors.com. Thanks for watching, and we invite you to join us next week for another adventure right here on 906 Outdoors.